Hello and welcome along to this blood red live stream of the Champions League Last-16 draw. I'm Matt Addison, Theo Squires and Ben Bocsak are both alongside me here. We'll be bringing you the draw very shortly. It kicks off in just a few minutes' time. It shouldn't take quite as long as the group phase does, thankfully. We shouldn't be here too long. We'll have some analysis and reaction, of course, afterwards to the four options for Liverpool. Bayern Munich, the most likely, Real Madrid, the second most, and then an equal chance of Benfica and FC Porto. That's obviously because Liverpool can only draw teams from other countries. They can only face teams who topped their group as well, having finished second to Napoli in their own group. Hopefully it's not too hard for us, Theo, to follow the draw as it goes along. We've had a bit of confusion in the past from UEFA, let alone ourselves, but hopefully it all goes smoothly today and Liverpool can get a decent draw. I mean, it's not quite a 50-50 chance of a Bayern or a Real Madrid or a slightly easier draw, but I think it's safe to say Jurgen Klopp and his players will be wanting probably a trip to Portugal in the new year.
Yeah, we were just reminiscing before we went live here. I think it was the round of 16 last year where we had to have the redraw because UEFA messed it all up and Liverpool eventually got into Milan after a second draw. I'm sure it wouldn't be too bad for the video views on this if we had to do it again, but hopefully it's straightforward this time. What I quite like about the four teams is there's a story behind every one of them, isn't there? Like Real Madrid, it's the rematch of the two finals. Though how many times can you say, oh, it's a rematch, chance for Liverpool to get revenge when we seemingly always lose to Real Madrid these days? And then Bayern, Sadio Mane, Benfica, Darwin Núñez, Porto, Luis Diaz. There's an angle in every single one of them. You would favour one of the trips to Portugal, like Liverpool have beaten them both in recent years. But then at the same time, last year's run to the final, I said it on podcast, and I think Doyley laughed at me when I said it was underwhelming. There was no famous Anfield European nights. It was too straightforward. There's no games that you're always going to want to like relive, show the highlights to your grandkids and all that stuff. It was quite a dull run to the final. While that would have been absolutely fine if they'd ended up winning the Champions League, imagine how much better it would have been when you're one of those Real Madrid fans saying how you've nearly been knocked out to PSG, you've nearly been knocked out to Chelsea, to Man City, and they've ended up being champions of Europe. They had that glamorous run, and it ended in fantastic form for them. Granted, Paris didn't go brilliantly for either fan base, but just on the pitch, footballing-wise, it was so many great stories for them to relive. So it wouldn't be too bad if it was a Bayern Munich or a Real Madrid this year, because you think Liverpool would like to get one over Sadio Mane. And Real Madrid, it'd just be nice to actually play him in front of fans at Anfield. But yeah, they've had the better of Liverpool so many times in the past, but probability says we can't keep losing against them forever. I think it's 6 times we've played them since the 4-0 thrashing all those years ago, and we've lost 5. We've only scored a couple. Like Fabio Borini up front in the Bernabeu, those dismal days. It's going to be a little bit better, and surely at some point, if it's Real Madrid, Liverpool will get the better of Real Madrid once again.
Yeah, it certainly would be a glamour tie. I think I'd rather wait for it and we can come back and do one of these draws for the semi-final and maybe have them a little bit further down the line. But we'll see how it goes. Ben, I mean, what's your thoughts on it? What's best case scenario, do you think, for Liverpool? Is it one of the Portuguese teams? Is there even one of those 2 Portuguese teams that you think Liverpool would favour, or is it just a case of either or?
I mean, obviously, based on Liverpool's track record, you would prefer those Portuguese teams. But I think for me personally, I'm with Theo. Bring Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, really. I think if you're going to win the Champions League, you're going to have to beat the best teams. So it doesn't really matter when you play them, as long as you beat them. That's what matters at the end of the day. And eventually, sooner or later, Liverpool will have to play at Bayern Munich or Real Madrid. And I think maybe in the final last season, that's what was kind of Liverpool's disadvantage, that they hadn't had that sort of moment where they beat someone who was a genuine contender, whereas Real Madrid went in confident, knowing, look, we've beaten City, we've beaten PSG, we've beaten, the big guns, and I think for Liverpool that would be a sort of big momentum booster to sort of galvanise Klopp and his side. And I think Liverpool need that as well this season. They need a big result. And as well, if you look at the teams that Liverpool have struggled against, it's almost been the smaller sides, you would say. I mean, except the form and thrashing of Napoli, all the other sort of results have been those lesser sides, the Nottingham Forest, the the Brightons and those sort of
Manchester
teams.
United.
Manchester United. I didn't want to say it, but you said it, Theo. And when Liverpool have actually played good teams, strong sides, aside from Arsenal, Man City and Tottenham last night, it's always has gone pretty well for Liverpool. So I would say because of that, I'd probably just go with the best team.
Yeah, it'd certainly be a glamour tide to look forward to as well if Liverpool's start of the season hasn't been particularly brilliant or particularly exciting at certain times. To have a Real Madrid or a Bayern Munich to look forward to in 2023 would certainly be something to get us through the World Cup at the very least. But do get your comments in. Let us know. The draw is not quite underway yet, so we'll fill a bit more time, shall we say, over the next couple of minutes just talking it through. But do let us know in the comments who you want Liverpool to get, who you want Liverpool to avoid. I mean, I suppose, Theo, in terms of all of these teams, none of them are going to want to face Liverpool, as much as it's not been a particularly brilliant start to the season necessarily. They've not been massively consistent. By the time February comes around, the first leg of these games in the middle of February, Luis Diaz hopefully will be back. Diogo Jota hopefully will be back. Maybe Liverpool will look a bit more like what Liverpool are meant to be, and possibly even the January transfer window. Could there be a signing potentially in there? It could be a very different Liverpool that takes to the field in this competition in the second part of it compared to the first.
Yeah, it could. I think probably might be too early for Diogo Jota. If we want to be really negative about Klopp's comments, he seemed like really worried that he was going to be out for the foreseeable. But when we see the footage of Luis Diaz with the brace on his knee, but still working, I think he was back in his homeland, wasn't he? He was in Colombia, the recent footage of him stepping up his rehab. You'd like to think at the very least he's going to be back for February. And we've been saying on these podcasts all season, just get to the World Cup break, have your mid-season winter camp in Dubai, and then Liverpool go again in 2023. You've got your players back from injury. You've got a chance to regroup. You've had a bit of a rest, and then you can actually see what the real Liverpool's about. Because it's not just Liverpool that has struggled this year for consistency. Like, some teams have handled it a hell of a lot better than them. But like we see Chelsea, one week they're brilliant, the next they're not. Man City have had a couple of patchy performances. They've got Haaland to bail them out and get all the goals. And United, we know they're hot and cold. It's quite telling that the two most impressive teams this year are Newcastle and Arsenal. And those are the ones who didn't have, European football last year. So they have not had as strenuous as a calendar as the normal top contenders. And for Liverpool, it is just about getting to winter and regrouping. Like, we know they're going to have players back from injury. Whether it's like some Naby Keita and they can have a big second half of the season. It's exciting to go and see that prospect. And we've said it before as well. Liverpool are stung by how much football they played last year. So the season finished later. Then they didn't have a normal length summer break. Didn't have a normal length pre-season. So the preparations weren't ideal. And then they're already thrown straight into the season. They're getting injuries from the off and they're having to play catch up from the very beginning. It's still not perfect for at the moment. I'm sure you'll talk about it on the Blood Red podcast later when you talk about the Tottenham performance. That wasn't Liverpool elite, was it? There were decent spells in the first half. But this Tottenham game is the perfect example for why teams don't want to play Liverpool in the Champions League. That they can still be this wounded animal, but they've got like Mohamed Salah up front who will dive on anything and get you goals. And then you've got the power of Anfield. And it's not been the best atmosphere at games this year. But Anfield, big European night, that's going to be something to get fans excited, to create a real buzz there, something can resemble the Man City victory last month. Liverpool have done it all in Europe in the last few years, but getting to finals, winning the competition, knocking out, I think, pretty much every single big name along the way at one point or another. If you're Real Madrid or if you're Porto, Benfica, you're going to fear them. Sadio Mane, Bayern Munich, they'll know exactly what to expect. And they all fear them because Liverpool in the European stage is completely different to Liverpool in the Premier League, especially in the season we're seeing at the moment.
Absolutely. And not just Liverpool, of course, to keep an eye on, Ben. Lots of other teams in contention. Chelsea, obviously, could have an impact on the top four race and all sorts of things like that. It'd be interesting to kind of see the other ties that come out as well. I mean, even just as simple a case as if Real Madrid could draw somebody that might win the tournament as well. Possibly we could see a couple of teams paired together that might knock out one of the favourites. It'd be interesting to see how the draw fares in that regard as well.
Yeah, there's some interesting teams. I'm going to be looking out for a couple of the fixtures. I mean, particularly I think Chelsea and Man City will be interesting to keep an eye on, and I think don't write off Tottenham as well. Even though we've just beaten them, I think they're going to be a contender for the top four still. So if they get a tough draw or perhaps an easier draw, and that means they go a little bit further in the Champions League, that could also give Liverpool a boost. And I think rather than sort of hoping for a tough draw for the English teams, I'm kind of hoping for them to get a little bit of an easier draw, so just so that they go a little bit further, and that means they get a little bit more games in their legs, because at the end of the day, I think this season is going to go down to fitness and who is the fittest team and the best team, and I think for that reason, I think I'm hoping that they will sort of go through to the next round.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? In terms of the season, the second half, it's almost impossible to predict with the sort of season that we've had, the World Cup, all of the different changes, the amount of football each of these teams are going to have in their legs. I mean, even Tottenham, I think before yesterday's game, Antonio Conte was talking about the number of injuries that they've got, the number of sort of problems that they've had in terms of having to play the same players all of the time. I mean, what do you reckon, Theo? How likely are Liverpool compared to the other English teams? Are they up there amongst the favourites, do you think? Are they as likely as Manchester City, say, to go on and win the Champions League? What's your thoughts? What are your thoughts, I should say, on that?
I think Liverpool have got a really good chance this year because the way the league's gone, they know it's just focus on the top four and getting the top four, and they don't have the other distractions. The Champions League will quickly become their main priority. If you look at the players in the squads, Liverpool should get off quite lightly with players actually competing in the World Cup. Like I think most of Man City's squad, apart from Haaland's, going to be in Qatar in some form or another, whether it's going to the later stages or just getting knocked out in the groups. Whereas Liverpool, we're probably only expecting, half a dozen players, maybe a couple more. But then when you look at that, Trent won't get off the bench. Fabinho won't get off the bench. Henderson, bench. Firmino, bench. Liverpool should be quite well rested going into it. Like I said earlier, they've beaten every single elite team in Europe under Jurgen Klopp at one point or another. They've beaten Barcelona, apart from Real Madrid, they've beaten Bayern Munich, they've beaten Man City, beaten both Milan teams. Even before that, they've knocked out Juventus under Rafa. That's when they got the victories over Real Madrid under Rafa. Got their history, their reputation. Everyone knows what Liverpool can do on the European stage on these two-legged ties, especially when you've got Anfield behind you. You can have a 3-0 lead come into Anfield. There's no reason why Liverpool can't win 4-0. We've seen that before as well. So they are a team to fear. Mohamed Salah is leading goal scorer in the tournament at the moment. You're going to have Darwin Núñez finding his feet even more. Diaz coming back from injury. That front three is terrifying for any side. And then if the defence finds a bit more form, like Konate's back, Van Dijk hopefully has a strong World Cup and he can build on that. Alisson's been in brilliant form this season. We might see the real Trent Alexander-Arnold again at some point. Andy Robertson's been in decent form the last few weeks. And then midfield, Fabinho, again, if he can get back to form, Thiago, Jordan Henderson, that's a great 11. That team's got so much experience. It can knock anyone out. It doesn't matter how big a side they're facing. So if you're any one of these teams, Liverpool are the teams you don't want, then hopefully it's a nice draw. But if it's one of the more intimidating ones, if it's a Real Madrid or a Bayern Munich, you're still not, right, that's us done in the round of 16, then you're still confident that Liverpool can have enough to progress. Maybe there is a slight concern that the first leg's going to have to be at Anfield and you're going to be going away for the second leg, having finished second. But it's still Liverpool in Europe. These stories are special. And hopefully it's history repeating themselves in a positive manner for Jurgen Klopp's side.
Yeah, it's certainly an opportunity, isn't it, to either hopefully progress if they get one of the lesser sides, but also something to look forward to in terms of that kind of narrative that we mentioned before. If they get one of the bigger sides, Alton Top just been introduced on the UEFA stage, so it looks like we're going to get underway very soon, Ben. But just as they explain, I think the way that this is going to work, just to continue on that point that Theo made there, really, of Liverpool are a team that haven't been particularly brilliant this season. We've said that a number of times already. But again, if you're Real Madrid, if you're Bayern Munich, as much as we're sat here thinking maybe that would be a tough one for them, it works both ways, doesn't it? They would very much think that would be a tough match for them. I'm sure they'll want to avoid Liverpool as much as Liverpool's players might want to avoid them.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's a term that gets overused in football, but form is temporary and class is permanent, and I think that certainly is true for this Liverpool team. And I think as well, you never know what's going to happen in January. Liverpool could strengthen. We're talking about some of these players who are sort of out of form. I think you only need maybe one or two signings to galvanize this team and actually have an impact, and bring in a holding midfielder to compete with Fabinho, and you might see Fabinho sort of picking up his form, and that other holding midfielder potentially taking off load off of Fabinho's shoulders, because I think as well people criticize Fabinho, but they forget how he was rushed back into the Champions League final, how much Liverpool relied on him to be that holding midfielder for the last however many years since he's been at the club. And I think if Liverpool can just get even one signing in, I think that could have a huge momentum. You saw with Luis Diaz last season. I think he really helped Liverpool go on a big run in that sort of last few months of the season. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if there was a signing, and that if that there was a signing, then that signing, whoever it may be, sort of galvanizing the team to go on another great run.
Yeah, absolutely. The Luis Diaz signing made a big impact last season. Probably needs to be a signing even more urgently this time around, obviously, with the lack of midfielders and all the rest of it. But it looks like the draw is just about to get underway. The first tie being drawn out of the hat now. So we'll talk you through that as it comes in. Make sure you keep your comments coming through. RB Leipzig are the first team to come out. Now, I'm not entirely sure how they're going to do this. Is it just going to be a case of they draw each tie as it comes, or how do they normally do this, Theo? I'm sure you'll probably be keeping an eye on it as well.
It looks like they put in a ball from each team in the pot, and then they're just going to pick one from that. Like, they know they can't get Real Madrid or Bayern Munich because Real Madrid are in their group, Bayern Munich from the same country. So it's a choice of 6 from the group winners, and then Hamid Altintop is just going to pick one. He's unscrewing it now, and hopefully they're not going to mess the balls up like they did last year and put the wrong ones in. And the first tie is Man City. Well, that's quite a nice one for them, isn't it? I think they always seem to play RB Leipzig, don't they?
They do. They played them, I think, in the group stage last season. I think they gave them a decent game, didn't they? But I think they won in the end. So, yeah, you'd fancy City to get through in that one, Ben. But not the easiest draw, but probably one that City would take.
Yeah, I mean, Dominic Szoboszlai said that Man City is the only team he doesn't want to play. So I think he didn't get what he wished for, I suppose, from RB Leipzig. But yeah, I think Leipzig are a good team, but I think defensively they're still quite vulnerable. And Erling Haaland going up against that defense, I think it should be a straightforward one for City. But then again, I think last season, even though it was a sort of dead rubber tie, Leipzig did beat City at home in Manchester. So you never know. If Leipzig are on form, they're in good form, and Marco Rose as well. It could happen.
Yeah, certainly not an easy tie, but probably one that Manchester City will get through. In the next tie has just come out, and Benfica are playing Club Bruges. So that's one option down for Liverpool, Theo. An interesting tie, that one.
A nice supporter final, doesn't it, if you get the winners of that one?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah. Always thinking one step ahead, one step at a time, though. So one option down, certainly, for Liverpool. The next one just coming out of the hat now that we can talk you through. And the next team
is Liverpool.
Right. We're about to find out. Theo, I'll let you talk us through.
Yeah, well, we know it's going to be Porto, Bayern, or Real Madrid. There are a few omens here. I think Bayern Munich's the one probability-wise that's most likely. They've got less teams they can face. And it's just... there's not really anything else you can say here. We know the 3 teams. We know what Liverpool have done against them in the past. Hopefully they're not going to pull the wrong ones out. They've got it in the right way. And Liverpool are being drawn against... I'm really waffling on here, just hoping for the best. Rematch, Real Madrid. Well. But like I was saying earlier, Real Madrid, when they had Liverpool in the knockout stages a couple of years ago, it was behind closed doors. Liverpool didn't get to play at the Bernabeu because it was Real Madrid's reserve stadium. Real Madrid didn't get to play in front of a full Anfield. These are different prospects here. Liverpool can make this count. Finally, they can hopefully settle this score against them. Like I said before, 6 times they've played them since beating them 4-0, and they've not won any. They've drawn 0-0, and that's the best result they've got. They've lost 5. They only scored in Kiev and at Real Madrid's reserve stadium when Mohamed Salah scored. Surely at some point Liverpool are going to get revenge. Salah's going to get revenge. And there are some positive omens you can get out of it. Like Liverpool finished runners-up in their group 3 times in the modern Champions League format. They won that twice, and they've had to knock out big teams along the way. So hopefully this is just the start. Get the holders out early, and your confidence is high for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A big tie. AC Milan just been drawn out against Tottenham, but obviously Liverpool, Real Madrid is what I'm going to ask you about. Ben, what's your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of expecting it. I don't know. I felt like, UEFA are always one for the narratives, and felt like it was kind of just going to happen for the narrative. It's a good story, the rematch of the final. What I would say is, if you knock Real Madrid out, there's not really anyone else that I really fear in this Champions League. Sort of any other team I'm not really scared of. So if you knock Real Madrid out, then you could potentially be the favourites heading into the quarter-final and the semi-final and the final. So I would say it's going to be a massive test, big opportunity for revenge. But if Liverpool do manage to do it, then I think there's nothing holding them back from going on to win it.
Yeah, the next draw out of the hat, the Eintracht Frankfurt have got Napoli. So
that's what we could have won.
That's what Liverpool could have got. Yeah, it's suddenly looks a lot worse to have not won that Champions League group now.
Yeah, it does. But then you have to be a good side to get there. Was it Frankfurt who won the Europa League last year? And you're going to have to play these big teams at one point or another. If you're going to get all the way to the final at the Ataturk, who would you rather have beaten along the way? Who would you rather have the story of beating? Real Madrid or Eintracht Frankfurt? No disrespect to them, because they are a good team. They have been improving loads in recent years, and that's why they're in the competition. That's why they've got this prospect of a game against Napoli. But yeah, Liverpool, Real Madrid, it's the glamour tie in this draw so far, isn't it? It's the one we're all going to be looking forward to, and just hoping that Liverpool can settle a few scores. Dortmund, Chelsea, that's just come out. That's a tasty one as well. So is AC Milan, Tottenham. But you think Liverpool on their day, they can beat anyone. We've not even got onto the Carlo Ancelotti factor here, because he's another one who always seems to get the better of Liverpool. We said in Paris that Liverpool are too predictable and they're very easy to play against because you know exactly how they're going to play. I don't think anyone can accuse Liverpool of that any more. It's part of the reason why they signed Darwin Núñez, so they could play a different style, so they could be unpredictable. Jurgen Klopp said it this season as well, that they need to get that unpredictability back. Well, they've sure as hell delivered it one way or another. Hopefully it can work in their favour come February time. First game at Anfield in that first leg, the atmosphere is going to be insane. Whether they've signed players in January or not, when you've got players back from injury, this is the one that you're looking forward to. And it's one where we'd be licking our lips at it even more if it wasn't for the fact that we'd lost 2 recent finals against them and a knockout tie against them. But it's Anfield. Real Madrid haven't had to come to Anfield for fans since, 2014? And that was a very different Liverpool then, in those dark days under Brendan Rodgers, when they'd lost Luis Suarez and they were playing like Balotelli, Barini, Ricky Lambert, Lazar Markovic. Liverpool's squad is so different now. And I've just seen the last one, PSG versus Bayern Munich. Enjoy that, Sadio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a big tie there. Inter Milan against FC Porto as well. So yeah, some big ties, some interesting ties there, Ben. I mean, how much do you think it will impact Liverpool? Obviously, finishing second means that they play the Anfield game first, go to the Bernabeu, the second match in this tie. Is that a big thing? Not that there's anything they can do about it, of course, but how much of an impact do you think that will make?
I think obviously a little bit of an impact, but I mean, if you can get a big advantage at Anfield or, get a good result, then I think the example that I would give is that Tottenham game from last night. Liverpool did show that they can kind of grind out a result. It will have to be 90 minutes in the Bernabeu, not 45 minutes like it was at the London Stadium. But I think Liverpool do have the personnel to sort of grind out results. If Van Dijk's in form, if Konate is on it, if Fabinho is at his peak powers, I think this Liverpool team can hold out. I mean, was only really one lapse of concentration that Real Madrid won the Champions League in the end. A quick counter attack. But if Liverpool have the lead, and Jurgen Klopp would never set out his team just to defend, but I think if Liverpool do have a lead, then they can defend it, and I think that's going to be the crucial and the important factor heading into the Bernabeu, is getting some sort of advantage over Real Madrid. And I think what also helps is there's no sort of away goals. That rule has been scrapped, so that I don't think playing home and away is that much of an advantage or a disadvantage nowadays. So obviously Anfield will be a boost, but I think as long as Liverpool can get just a little bit of a lead, a 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that, then I think there's all there is all the potential of holding out for a result.
I'll tell you one thing though, the fixture list could be pretty vile now. Like the round of 16, the first legs are on the 14th, the 15th, the 21st and the 22nd of February. Well, Liverpool got the Merseyside derby at Anfield on the 11th. Then they've got a trip to Newcastle on the 18th. So those are two pretty big games that could be around it. And then the second legs, 7th, 8th, 14th and 15th of March. Well, you've got Manchester United at home on the 4th of March. So you're going to have some big ties littered around these games as well in the Premier League. There's some easier Premier League ones as well, like Bournemouth away, Fulham at home, Crystal Palace away. But still, if you're going to have like the derby at home to Everton, then you've got Real Madrid, and then say you've got the return. No, you've got the Manchester United game potentially just around the second leg. There's not really going to be much room for Jurgen Klopp to rotate either. It's just going to have to be fully battling 90 minutes, players going to the very maximum and then having to go again. But maybe that's what they need. Like, we've seen so much rotation during the first half of the season. Players have picked up injury. Liverpool struggled for rhythm. Maybe when it's the business end of the season, and we're going to get an early business end of the season just by getting a tie like a Real Madrid early on, then you're going to have to go again. And it is going to galvanise them. It is going to give them a bit of momentum to kickstart 2023 in style and have a successful second half of the season. Like 2022, as much as it promised or almost promised this unprecedented quadruple, it's turned out to be a pretty miserable sporting year for Liverpool, even though they've got 2 trophies in the bag. Like, we're expecting so much more. So hopefully 2023 can be the year for them.
Yeah, certainly a lot to look forward to for Liverpool. That big tie with Real Madrid. Just before we finish, I'll read out the entire draw as a whole. RB Leipzig against Manchester City, Club Brugge against Benfica, Liverpool Real Madrid was the third one that came out, Milan against Tottenham Hotspur, Frankfurt against Napoli. That could have been the Liverpool one had they managed to score another couple of goals in their group. Borussia Dortmund against Chelsea will be an interesting one, Inter against Porto, and finally PSG against Bayern Munich. We'll have even more reaction later on today in the Blood Red podcast. We'll have myself, Ian Doyle, Paul Gorst and David Lynch recording that this afternoon. Reaction to this, reaction to the win over Tottenham, and a little bit of a preview for that game with Derby County as well. For now, though, we shall leave it there. Thank you very much to Theo and to Ben for joining me. Real Madrid for Liverpool in the last 16 of the UEFA Champions League. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back very soon indeed.